For most of her life, Nicole Kidman believed there were certain doors you simply did not open in public. You could hint. You could suggest. You could deflect with humor and talk about the ups and downs, or learning curves, and what every couple goes through. But the real things, the fragile, beating heart truths that defined a family from the inside out, those stayed within four walls. At 58, that belief finally changed. It happened during what was supposed to be a respectful, slightly nostalgic, carefully managed interview. The kind she had done 1,000 times, soft lighting, warm tone, an interviewer who knew how to ask personal questions without sounding invasive. The cameras were still being adjusted when she sat down in the chair. She smoothed her dress, crossed her legs, and glanced around the studio. It was quiet, almost intimate. No live audience. Just the crew, the host, and that red light above the lens waiting to come alive. Ready when you are, the director called. The interviewer smiled across from her. Nicole, it's really an honor. She returned the smile automatically. Thank you. It's good to be here. They began with predictable territory, her new role, her reflections on aging in Hollywood, how she chose projects now compared to when she was young. Her answers were easy, thoughtful but practiced, like a melody she knew by heart. Then the interviewer leaned forward and gently shifted the conversation, the way all interviewers eventually did. People are always fascinated by your personal life, he said. Especially your relationship with Keith. You two have been together a long time. You've seen each other through so much, publicly and privately. You've spoken before about his support through difficult times. But, have you ever held back something you wanted to share and never did? Nicole's fingertips drifted along the armrest. In that small, almost invisible gesture, something changed. Yes, she said. The word surprised even her. It came out calm. Clear. Final. As if it had been waiting behind her teeth for years. The interviewer blinked. You have? She nodded, looking down for a moment. When she lifted her eyes again, they held none of the polished distance people were used to. There was something raw there now, something unguarded. There's a part of our story, she said slowly, that I've never spoken about. It's not a scandal. There's no affair. No betrayal. It's a family confession. And for a long time, I thought it wasn't my place to share it. She paused. But it shaped us. It shaped him. And it shaped the way we built our family. So, in a way, it's my story too. The interviewer's voice dropped into a softer register. If you're comfortable, I think people would listen. Nicole exhaled, almost like somebody stepping off a ledge they've been standing on for too long. It starts, she said, with a phone call from Keith's mother. She let the sentence settle. And it ends with a night when I thought our marriage wouldn't survive what she told him. Years earlier, long before 58, long before the word a legacy started appearing in interviews, Nicole and Keith had gone through a season that the public never saw. From the outside, those years looked like the golden montage of a stable celebrity marriage, award shows, joint appearances, a smiling family on the red carpet. He toured, she filmed. They flew home to each other, to their daughters, to a house full of music and children's laughter. From the inside, something invisible was cracking. It wasn't dramatic, and Nicole explained in the interview. There were no plates thrown, no screaming matches, no headlines. It was more like slow erosion. It began with Keith. He started waking earlier than usual. Not for exercise or work, but because he couldn't stay in bed. At first, Nicole thought it was jet lag, then stress, then the usual restless churn that came when he was writing an album. He would sit alone in the kitchen at dawn, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he barely drank. Sometimes he would stare outside so long that the sky changed from black to blue without him noticing. He was more distracted. Quick to apologize for small things. Quiet after phone calls with his parents. But if she asked, "Are you okay?" he would smile and say, "Yeah, I'm fine, love. Just a lot on my mind." Nicole had spent enough years with him to know that a lot on my mind meant, I'm carrying something I don't know how to drop. Later, she would realize this was the first ripple from a stone thrown decades earlier, long before she ever knew his name. At the time, it just felt like a shift. A heaviness around him that didn't have a clear source. One evening, after dinner, he disappeared into his studio and didn't come back for hours. She found him sitting on the floor, guitar beside him, not playing. He looked up when she stepped inside. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied. "Did you eat?" "Not hungry." "Keith." He smiled, but there was no life in it. "I'm okay, and I see." She didn't believe him. But she also knew you couldn't force someone to speak before they were ready. So she did something else. She sat down on the floor next to him, shoulder brushing his, and leaned her head back against the wall. They stayed like that for a long time. No music. No questions. Just breathing. He eventually broke the silence. "Do you ever think about what you inherited from your parents?" he asked. Nicole turned her head slightly to look at him. She thought about discipline, work ethic, faith, stubbornness. About her mother's quiet strength and her father's intellect. About the complex mix of love and expectation that shaped who she became. "Yes," she said eventually. "Of course." He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately," he said. "About what we carry without knowing we're carrying it." She studied him. Did something happen? He hesitated. His fingers twisted the ring on his hand. "Mum told me something," he said. "Something about our family. Something I didn't know." Nicole's chest tightened. "What did she tell you?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. His throat worked around words that refused to rise. "I'm not ready," he whispered. "Not yet." In the weeks that followed, his unease seeped into the house like a quiet fog. He was more attentive with their daughters than ever. Over-attentive. Almost. He double-checked everything. Doors, seatbelts, bedtime routines. He watched them with an intensity that unsettled Nicole, not because it was unloving, but because there was fear threaded through it. She caught him standing in the hallway one night, looking into one of the girls' rooms while she slept, tears in his eyes for no clear reason. "Keith," she said gently. He wiped his face quickly, embarrassed. "I'm fine," he murmured. "Go back to bed." She didn't. She walked to him, slid an arm around his waist, and rested her head on his shoulder, looking in at their sleeping child. "What's going on?" she asked quietly. He swallowed. "I'll tell you," he said. "I just need to find the right way." She could have pushed. She could have demanded to know. But something in his voice told her the truth was big enough that forcing it would only break them both. So she waited. And then, she told the interviewer, "One night he finally told me." And I understood why he'd been so afraid to say it out loud. They were in Nashville, in that house that had become more a home than any of the glamorous properties they owned. The girls were asleep. The house was quiet. Rain tapped against the windows in a soft, constant rhythm. Keith appeared in the doorway of their bedroom, holding his phone. "NIC," he said quietly. "Can we talk?" She put down her book and sat up straighter. His tone was different. Not tired. Not distracted. Resolved. "Of course," she said. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in his hands. His knuckles were white. "I spoke to Mum again," he said. Nicole felt something in her stomach tighten. "About what?" "About what she told me a few weeks ago," he replied. "I asked her if I could share it. With you. With anyone. If I needed to." He let out a bitter little laugh. She said, "It's your story now, love. It's shaped you more than it ever did me." Nicole clasped her hands in her lap. "What did she tell you?" she asked, voice gentle, careful, like she was approaching a frightened animal. He didn't look at her. Instead, he stared at a fixed point on the wall, as if watching something unfold there. "When I was a kid," he said slowly, "I always knew there was something we didn't talk about. Something that made the house go quiet when certain subjects came up. I thought it was money. Or extended family. Or adult things children shouldn't hear." He shook his head. "It wasn't that." He inhaled, then finally forced the words out. "She told me I wasn't their first child." Nicole's breath caught. "She told me I had an older brother," he said. "A baby they lost before I was born." Silence settled between them. "She never told you?" Nicole whispered. He shook his head. "Not once. Not even hinted. I found out at 50-something years old that I was the second son. The second chance." His voice cracked on the last two words. "She said they didn't talk about it back then," he continued. "That people didn't know what to say. That grief was something you swallowed. That it was better not to dwell. So they buried it. They built a life on top of it. They had me. And they never told me that I'd been born into the shadow of a child who never got to exist in the world." Nicole felt tears sting her eyes. She reached out and took his hand, gently prying the phone from his grip. "I'm so sorry," she said. He shook his head. "It's not about feeling sorry. It's just, suddenly everything made sense." He looked at her with eyes that were both young and ancient at the same time. "You know how Mum always said she worried too much? How Dad would say she hovered? How she always seemed scared of something even when everything was fine?" Nicole nodded. "She wasn't just anxious," he said. "She was terrified of losing me. Because she'd already lost a baby once. And I never knew. I just grew up feeling like there was this invisible pressure to be okay. To be fine. To not cause trouble. To not make anyone too worried, because worry was already the air in the house." "It wasn't your fault," Nicole said softly. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I know that," he said. "Here." He tapped his forehead. "I know that up here. But here," he pressed his palm against his chest. "Here it feels like I've been carrying someone else's unfinished story my whole life." He swallowed. "And when we went through what we went through," he faltered. Even now, years later, Nicole felt the old ache in her body. The subtle memory of appointments and tests and that moment in a room that smelled of disinfectant when a doctor used phrases like "not viable" and "it's nobody's fault here and these things happen." Their loss had been early. Quiet. The kind people told you to move on from. But nothing about it had felt small. When we lost the baby, Keith continued, a mum cried in a way I'd never heard before. Not just for us. For herself. For the baby she never talked about. She told me, I know this pain. I've carried it alone my whole life. He looked at Nicole, voice shaking. And I realized something, NIC. Grief doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. It sits in the room whether you name it or not. It's passed down in the way people love, the way they fear, the way they hold on too tight or not at all. He rubbed his face with both hands. So here's the confession, he said hoarsely. I've spent my entire life trying to be the child who makes up for the one they lost. And when we lost ours, I felt like I had failed everyone all over again. Them. You. Our baby. Everyone. Nicole's heart broke in a way no camera would ever see. That's not true, she said. You know that's not true. He shook his head, tears spilling despite his effort to contain them. Of course it's not true, he said. But it feels true. It feels like I was born into a role I didn't know about, and when life didn't go the way we hoped, I felt like I had confirmed some terrible belief written before I even got here, that our family was always going to be marked by loss. He dropped his hands and looked at her, eyes red, vulnerable in a way she had seldom seen. I didn't know how to tell you, he said. I didn't want to put that weight on you. Didn't want you to feel like you were married to somebody carrying around ghosts. Nicole took his face in her hands. You think I haven't noticed? She said gently. You think I haven't felt you pushing yourself too hard to be everything, all the time? The perfect father, the perfect husband, the perfect son? Keith, this explains you. It doesn't condemn you. He closed his eyes as if the words physically hurt. I'm so tired, he whispered. Of being the second chance. I just want to be me. Back in the studio, Nicole went silent for a moment, letting the memory pass through her. That was the night, she said, when I realized something fundamental about the man I married. He wasn't just Keith Urban, musician, husband, father. He was also Keith, the second son of a story that had never been spoken out loud. She looked directly at the interviewer now. And here's the part I've never said publicly, as she continued. For a while, that nearly broke us. The interviewer's eyes widened slightly. How so? Grief moves people in different directions, and Nicole said. I leaned toward him. I wanted closeness. I wanted us to talk, to share, to hold on to each other. He leaned away, not because he didn't love me, but because he thought his sadness would swallow me. He thought he was protecting me. She gave a rueful smile. We built a life because we believed in each other. But for a time, we were living like two people who believed they had to carry their pain alone to protect the other person. At first, it was small things. He stopped mentioning his mother's calls. She stopped mentioning the baby. He poured himself into work. She poured herself into functioning. From the outside, nothing seemed wrong. On the inside, silence carved a canyon between them. There was one night, and Nicole said, when I went to bed and realized I hadn't really looked at him all day. Not once. Not really. Just glanced. And it terrified me. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen and found him sitting there with that same untouched mug of coffee. Something inside her snapped. I told him, we can't do this. We cannot keep pretending we're okay just because we love each other. He looked up, startled. What do you want me to do? He asked, defensive but scared. I want you to let me in, she said. I want you to be sad where I can see you. I want you to tell me about your brother. About your mother. About this family confession you're trying to carry around like a secret, even though it's written all over your face. He looked away, jaw tight. I don't want to drown you in it, he muttered. She walked over and put both hands on the kitchen table, leaning toward him. You're not drowning me, she said softly. You're freezing me out. He flinched. And then the bravado melted. He dropped his head into his hands and finally, let himself cry in front of her. Not the quiet, controlled tears she'd caught glimpses of in hallways, but something deeper. The kind of crying that seemed to come from a much younger man, one who had never been given permission to feel this fully. She walked around the table, knelt beside him, and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. That morning, as she told the interviewer, it was the first time I realized that his family secret wasn't just information. It was a script. One that said, feel alone, carry alone, don't burden anyone, fix it yourself. She smiled faintly. And we decided to rewrite it. They went to therapy. Together. Not as a last resort, not as a crisis bandage, but as an act of deliberate, almost stubborn hope. Keith talked about his mother's confession. About how it reframed his childhood in ways that made sense and hurt at the same time. About how realizing he'd grown up in the shadow of an invisible brother didn't make his parents bad, just human and overwhelmed. Nicole talked about what it was like to love someone who kept trying to shield her from a pain they were already sharing, whether they spoke about it or not. They learned to say things neither of them had been modeled growing up. I feel afraid. I need help. I'm angry and I don't know why. I love you, but I'm very sad today. They talked about their baby. The baby no one knew about. They gave that tiny life a place in their story that wasn't just clinical and hushed, but tender and acknowledged. And slowly, the canyon between them narrowed. We didn't fix it in a week, and Nicole said. Or a month. Or even a year. It was a long process. A lot of unlearning. A lot of realizing that our families of origin had written first drafts of who we thought we had to be. The interviewer sat quietly, absorbing it all. So, he said eventually, what is the shocking confession? If you had to put it into a single thought? Nicole smiled sadly. That for most of his life, she said, Keith believed he was living on borrowed ground. That his parents had lost a child, and that his existence was, on some level, a fragile gift he had to constantly justify. And that when we faced our own loss, he saw it not as a tragedy of circumstance, but as a confirmation of some unspoken family curse he was doomed to repeat. She paused. And that I didn't know. For years. I loved a man who was doing an extraordinary amount of emotional labor in silence because he believed that speaking it would make him too heavy to love. Her eyes softened. That's what shattered me. Not the secret itself. The loneliness inside it. The interviewer's voice dropped. And why share this now? He asked. At 58? Nicole sat back thoughtfully. Because, she said, I think there are a lot of people like him. People who grew up in families where things weren't said. Where grief, or addiction, or mental health, or loss, or fear lived underneath the floorboards instead of on the table. And they walk through life thinking they're broken or cursed, when really, they're just carrying things that never got a name. She let out a slow breath. And I want to say this, You are not the unfinished story of the people who came before you. You are allowed to live differently, to love differently, to parent differently, to speak. Her expression gentled. And I suppose, in a way, I'm also saying it for him, even though he already knows. The interviewer smiled faintly. Does he asked, know that you're sharing this? Oh, yes, she said. I asked him before I came. I told him what I wanted to talk about. And what did he say? The interviewer asked. Nicole's face lit up with something warmer than nostalgia. He laughed, she said. And said, go on then. Tell them I'm a second son with a second chance who finally stopped trying to be perfect. She smiled. Then he said, just make sure you tell them I had help. I didn't figure this out alone. She tilted her head slightly. And he's right. None of us do. Later that night, in a quiet house far from the studio, Keith sat on the couch with the television remote in his hand, watching his wife on screen. He listened as she spoke about his mother, about the brother he never met, about the grief that had shaped him without his permission. He watched her talk about their loss, their silence, their therapy, their choosing each other again and again. There were no dramatics to his reaction. No breakdown. No shock. They had lived this together. But when she said, he thought he was the second chance, when actually he was the chance to do it differently, he felt his throat tighten. He turned the TV off before the credits finished rolling. A moment later, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his mother. I saw the interview. It read, you were always enough. I'm sorry I didn't know how to say that earlier in life. I love you. Keith closed his eyes, letting the words settle somewhere they'd needed to land for decades. Then he typed a reply. I know, Mum. I love you too. We're okay. When Nicole came home, she found him in the kitchen, barefoot, making tea. How bad was it? She teased softly, dropping her bag. He turned, leaning against the counter, looking at her the way a man looks at a person who has walked through fire beside him. You were kind, he said simply. She smiled. I tried. He walked over, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her forehead. Thank you, he murmured. For telling the truth. For you're making sure our story doesn't sound like a tragedy. It isn't, she replied. It's a family story. Messy, painful, beautiful. Like everyone else's. He laughed quietly. Only ours comes with microphones. She rolled her eyes. And guitars. He grinned. And the occasional Oscar dress, he added. She slapped his chest lightly, laughing. Then his expression softened. Hey, NIC, he said. Yes? I'm not a curse, he said, echoing an old belief from a much younger self. No, she replied gently. You never were. And our girls? He asked. They're not born into some shadow. They're born into a family that tells the truth, she said. That's the difference. He nodded, drawing her into an embrace. Outside, the world continued speculating, analyzing, dissecting the interview. Headlines called it a shocking, a roar, unexpectedly honest. Clips went viral. People commented, debated, shared their own family secrets in the shadows of the comment sections. But inside that house, it was much simpler. A man who had spent most of his life feeling like a second chance stood in his kitchen, holding the woman who had helped him write a new story. And somewhere between them, unspoken but understood, was the real confession. That the most shocking thing about their family wasn't the secret of a lost child, or a history of grief, or the patterns they inherited. It was that they had dared to break the silence at all, and then keep loving each other, louder than the ghosts.